All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Julie, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Kara Caston.
Here.
Ken Dawson.
Here.
Krista Espinoza.
Here.
Cheryl Fuller. Here. Jenny Hagstrom.
Here.
Terry Pavicic.
Here.
Don Renner.
Here.
Rayhan Hashim.
Here.
And Jason Trejo.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, having a quorum, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's turn it over for tonight's student perspectives.
Yep. All right. Here, Courtney, I'll give you the clicker since they have a whole bunch of slides.
Good evening, everyone. We are really excited to kick off Student Perspectives with a presentation tonight that revolves around things I never got to do in high school. And so once again, we are so absolutely amazingly lucky to work in a district like this that supports students who travel all around the world. And that's what we get to hear about tonight. So I'm going to introduce Mike Hines, who is our staff member. He's our science department chair. And he got to take 20 students, 19 from North and 1 from South, over to Europe this summer. And they got to attend the Global Leadership Summit. And he's going to talk about that and the students are going to come up and talk a little bit about their wonderful experiences they had this summer. So please welcome Mike Hines.
I'm going to lift this out here just so we'll put it back down later. First of all, I want to thank you for your support of Travel in District 99 and for having us here tonight. I think this is a unique travel experience for students because of this Global Leadership Summit, and that's why I asked Dr. Dement if she would allow us to come present to you tonight. We know that kids travel to Spain, Peru, travel all over the world, right? But this was something different that I hadn't seen. I've taken students to Costa Rica 4 times, but on this trip, we're going to tell you a little bit about the difference, why this was a little different trip. As you can see, we visited 4 countries in Europe in 10 days. We started in Berlin, Germany, ended up at went to Karlovy Vary, Czech Republic, then to Vienna, Austria, and Budapest, Hungary. Along the way, we stopped in Dresden, Germany, which was actually bombed during World War II by the Brits and the English, or the Brits and the Americans, and it was just fascinating to see that and how it's rebuilt from that era compared to other things around there that are still in progress. We also got to visit the United Nations in Vienna, an hour-and-a-half tour there, and what they're doing with their initiatives around sustainability. Everything we did was based on water and humanity. You'll see that in just a second. We got to walk a pipeline. We walked from one town to another through the vineyards and the pipelines underground there. That pipeline runs water right from the Alps down to Vienna, and they don't treat it with any chlorine. They really don't treat it with anything. They're amazed that we treat ours with chlorine. So those conversations that we had. So what was neat about this, we spent 3 days in Berlin, Germany at a conference center at this Global Leadership Summit that is run by EF Tours. And as you can see, the rules are different here. When the students walked in, they were greeted by many flags of all the nations by the EF people welcoming into this conference hall. What the students did here was they talked about water and society. Water and its impact on society. They were given a problem to solve in their rooms around the idea of water. And they had to work with teams at tables in different rooms over the 3 days and come up with a product. If you think Shark Tank, right? The idea that they had to come up with a product that they got to present in their rooms. The winning table in each room then got to go to the larger conference and present to, you'll see here in a second, and present to these 800 students. There were 800 students there, 300 adults at this conference. And so you talk about a real authentic audience, it was there for this. So they got to present on stage there. And they got to give the impact of water on site. Let me just check my notes here because there's a couple things. At this conference, whoops, did I do that? At this conference, the keynote speakers of note were 2 big ones. One was Molly Kawahata. Molly was the featured speaker. Molly has written a book called The Scale of Hope. She was President Obama's climate advisor in the White House. So the students got to meet and hear from her. Another guy is Gunter Pauli. Gunter is an entrepreneur and economist, and he actually built a solar panel boat that actually has traveled around the globe now. The first one took a long, long time. The second version of that now has made it, I think it was 98 days or something, a solar-powered vessel that can travel around. And so he talked about the nature of that, and he wrote a book called The Blue Economy. The students got to do, oops, sorry. The students got to do design thinking. As you see there, they had to know about empathize. These were the steps that they took as they designed their products. They had to understand the nature of their audience. They had their purchaser, their consumer, and they went through all these steps as they did their design thinking, and the students will talk about that in a second. The teamwork, you can see them here. In the teams, the upper left is Ben that's sitting down. That was his team from around the country. There were 28 countries represented and 30 states. And so our students were split up among all these people in the different rooms, so they got to meet people. AquaGuard, you can see down there, that's the students presenting in their classroom. One of our students that's in the middle of the left-hand corner was going to be here tonight. He couldn't make it. Matt was on one of the teams that were selected to go up on the big stage. The winning group, that coral cuff that's right there, that presentation got to go in the Nobel Prize Museum for a year now. So it's on display at the Nobel Prize Museum. So that was what the students were shooting for. Okay, we'll let the students talk because they're the important ones here and what their experiences were at this global summit and on the tour. This is Mega. I'll let Mega introduce herself.
Hi,
You're good.
It should be good.
I'm Mega.
Did I turn it off?
You might have just slowed it down.
Hi, I'm Mega. I'm a junior at DGN, and the EF Tour Leadership Summit was an incredible experience for me. It pushed me to step out of my comfort zone, and it introduced me to the design thinking process. The summit showed me that there isn't only one correct way or right way to solve a problem or find a solution. And one of the most valuable parts of the trip for me was during the summit, when we were presenting our prototypes, my group chose me to be one of the key speakers. And I believe that experiences like this are important for students because it exposes us to new environments and new cultures. These experiences help students grow in ways that go beyond the classroom and help prepare us to become better and more creative leaders in the future. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Leela. I am a senior at Downers Grove North. And at this past EF Summit, we were all really thrown into this really new and unusual kind of scenario. We were working with kids from all around the globe who were all complete strangers to us, and as you might expect, it was kind of a daunting environment. You know, it was never really something we'd experienced before, and I was admittedly a little nervous going into it, but looking back, and I can say that this was really my favorite part of the entire experience. I met some really amazing people, and I think I learned a lot about myself along the way. For one, I learned that I really do enjoy these kinds of things. I like working with other people and problem solving, especially about things that are really important to the world. Again, as Mr. Hines touched on, this summit was about water sustainability, which in our world right now is a really important topic and something that really needs to be talked about. And to feel that we are kind of part of that change, that we are part of something that is important to this world is just really meaningful. And I think that was very important to me during this trip. In addition, I love to travel, and we got to see some really incredible cities in this whole trip. This particular picture up here is from Karlovy Vary, which is a city in the Czech Republic. This was one of my favorite cities that we visited. This particular picture was taken right after we had gone on this tour of these underground water springs. Karlovy Vary is a city that's kind of surrounded, or not surrounded by, but kind of run on water. Everything around there is kind of sorry, I'm braining my words. Everything around there is kind of based around water, and these springs are really integral to the entire city as a whole. And overall, I just think that this trip was really incredible and something I'm very grateful to have gone on.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and I'm a junior at Downers Grove South. And the Leadership Summit was a huge eye-opener for me, as I got to meet a lot of different people from around the world.
You can read your sheet. She had more than that on her sheet. I sent this over before her slide was, it should have been updated. So go ahead, Tanya.
The summit has taught me how I can apply my leadership skills to different situations, such as collaborating with my peers. I truly got to learn about many different cultures and the impact water has on them, which was the summit's theme this year. Apart from the educational aspect of this trip, I was able to form connections with people from different parts of the world and within my own group. I believe travel is definitely important for students because it gives them the opportunity to explore different cultures while learning more about themselves along the way. This trip has definitely left a huge impact on me.
I want to give Tanya credit too because she was the only South student. She didn't know anybody on the trip. And she came to our first meeting and it was great to build those partnerships. Ryan couldn't make it. Ryan actually was not in school today because he was not feeling well. So Ryan here got to meet one of our featured speaker. That young man in the middle is from the California area, where our boys are gathered around him, and one of the student leaders of the trip. And then Rayhan.
I thought someone looked familiar.
I just want to point this out. We were in right here by the Brandenburg Gate the night before the Euro Cup final, and so all the hooligans from Britain were out having their pep rally. And that one in the middle that doesn't have a shirt on was not one of our students. He was a British soccer fan. So
it's definitely fun to celebrate with those guys. For me, the EF trip was a big eye-opener in the sense that it helped me see through other people's lenses, kind of. Coming into the trip, I was curious about the conference and how it's going to be and stuff like that. To be honest, I wasn't going on that trip for that main reason, but it turned out, in my opinion, to be the best part of the trip by far. There were a lot of interesting people I got to meet, whether they were from the States or other countries. Collaborating with them also helped me learn new ways to work together on a single goal. Now looking back, I have friends in California, Atlanta, New York, and even Poland. So this type of networking and being able to meet different types of people is something a high school student normally doesn't get the chance to do, right? So it's an experience that's an important life skill, not to mention not only did we get to be educationally immersed in a lot of knowledgeable speakers and cool activities. EF did an incredible job hosting us, but I think the main takeaway from this trip is the people that we meet and the experiences that we had with them. It's an important thing that I don't think a classroom setting could teach us overall, right? So yeah, that was my experience. And just, to finish up, that was actually, we ended up in Budapest, just some more, and there's Dresden. We got to go to the Berlin Wall. That's Dresden again. And then I just want to thank the D99 Board of Education for your continued support of travel. I think if we're going to build students who are part of the global network, what better way than to get them out into the globe to meet this. So thank you for your support. Thank you, students and parents, for letting your students go. And thank you for allowing us to present this evening.
Quickly, I know some of you may have some questions, but I do want to thank Mike and all of the adults who traveled with our students. I have traveled with students before, and it is kind of stressful. And so to all of our staff who take the time to do this, because it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of patience and a lot of just knowing how to navigate through difficult, sometimes situations. And I just commend Mike for always wanting to do that with our students and all of our staff members who do travel with our kids. It's an incredible experience. And it is really cool to see how our goals as a district really foster all of this travel and foster this interest in students. And we want them to explore all of these different things. So thank you again for supporting our students and our staff to take these amazing trips. So thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I totally appreciate that. I had thank you, Mike, and for doing things like this. I had the opportunity to talk with a younger student in a restaurant recently, and he talked about the importance of learning, going to different places and experiencing that, and how it broadens your educational horizon. So it's super important for our children to witness things like this. So thank you so much for taking the lead on this and making it happen.
And I failed to recognize the two chaperones that went with us were Kate Troyer, who teaches AP Environmental Science at North and at South High School, and Alexis Domina, who teaches math and is in the EL program. And so having those two along with that wealth of knowledge that they have was fantastic to have them.
I forgot to say, how do I become a chaperone?
Your name on the list. Bring 6 students.
I'd like to also commend Mike. I've had many conversations with you, and I know the passion that you really have about doing this. So my hat's off to you for what an incredible opportunity that you students had. And a question for the students, you met kids or students from all over the world. Which students had the biggest impact on you, and from what countries?
let me just real quick, we also were paired up with another travel group from California that had 5 boys and 1 girl. And you know my passion, so forgive me for just a second. We got off the plane, we walked out, our 5 girls walked over to that 1 girl and introduced themselves without any push from us whatsoever, and they welcomed her into our group. So it was the California group was part. Sorry, that I just like I got goosebumps right now thinking about how they welcomed that girl into our group. So
Yeah,
what was her
that's
name?
great.
Annette, yeah, we welcomed Annette in. So sorry, but now you can answer. Like if there was something else, or I can answer for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, yeah, you can go.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, overall in my group, I think that everyone really made an impact on me. I really loved my group. We got along really well. We're still all in contact now, so I still talk to them regularly. But the majority of my group was from the U.S., but there was one girl from Greece.
Oh, wow.
So her perspective and just how water was a part of her life was really different. She grew up in this very small coastal farm, like farming town, which was obviously very different than Downers Grove being close to like a very big city. So I thought it was really interesting to see like the differences, both just in like our overall lives and then especially in how water affected our lives, since that was so central to the overall conference.
Cool. That's awesome.
For me, there was a 13-year-old boy from Greece in my group, and he was really funny, and he brought a lot of like light. When we were making our prototypes, we didn't have that much time to brainstorm and like build and all. So it was a very stressful, and we only made our like prototype in 30 minutes and like did the whole script and all that. And I think he just brought a lot of like positivity and joy for our group.
Great.
For me, my group was like, we had like a really big group, and it was like 8 people in my group. And one of the things that stood out to me was how inclusive they were and how like open they were to like any ideas coming from any member. And we all tried to somehow like put all their ideas together to like form a good product.
Fantastic.
For me, it was there's a kid from Poland, and his ideas were absolutely phenomenal. Even though he couldn't speak English that well and couldn't like communicate with us that well, he would always, when he had an idea, he would take out a piece of paper, draw it out for us, somehow make us understand it. But I think almost a lot of the ideas that we had were really focused around his kind of first impressions on like the issue and stuff like that. And I thought it was phenomenal the way he handled the idea making process. So,
thank you.
What students are eligible to travel on this type of program? Do you have to be a certain, student that's progressed in science and or math courses, or is it just anyone who's interested?
The history of my welcoming kids is any student in D99 that's interested in traveling, and we try to plan it out well enough in advance that it lowers the economic impact on families, because it really is a big financial decision for families. But we open it up to anybody that I have over the past. I'll take anybody that would like to go. It doesn't have to be science. It really is across the board, and so that's how I look at it.
So freshmen too, like
I've got to. If we think further ahead about what travel is going, I got to lean on Gina Zaccardi for this. Is what does that look like for a 9th grader to try to travel? You'd have to tap into them when they are in 8th grade, and there's no mechanism for doing that yet. I don't see it. I don't know if a 9th grader might be ready to handle this. Our bus broke down at the border of Germany and the Czech Republic on the way there for 3 hours in 92-degree heat. And don't get me wrong, but I've never taught freshmen in my life, so I don't know like if I want freshmen in that situation. These guys, however, were fantastic. They were perfect. We made it to the next rest stop, and we got through that situation. But I don't know what that mechanism looks like.
Sure.
When I retire, my goal is to build a travel foundation where maybe we give scholarships to students. Like we build a foundation of travel, because a lot of these students travel, and like they're always around the globe. If we get students who haven't traveled to see the world, then you make a difference in a person's life, I think, even more than this. That would be a goal for me.
I would support that.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Living near the Great Lakes, we certainly are close to an abundance of water. traveling with a group from California that they may have a very different perspective on water and usage. Did you have any conversations from that perspective? I know there's a lot of talk in the media right now about states in the western portion of our country who want to purchase water from, states that border the Great Lakes. Did that come up in any of your conversations?
Our focus was primarily on, I kind of used the Great Lakes as an example. So one of the examples that we used was the Chicago River, right? And on how, not like Great Lakes, but like, channels through the Great Lakes. But we use that example as the way how it's Chicago's waste management kind of thing, or it used to be at least. So we use that example as an idea to try to solve that issue. So our main thing was trying to figure out issues that we could solve. So we kind of used these Great Lakes or Chicago River, for example, as an issue we could solve. But, our group ended up using, I think, an example of, again, is a kid from Poland that he brought up a lake at his home with issues with bacteria. So that's the issue that we chose to solve, yeah.
That's the way the students designed their products, was they came up with one person's problem in their particular area.
I see.
And then the product was designed to solve that student's problem. And the one that won was a band that goes on your ankle that if you get close to coral reefs in the ocean, it's geolocated so it starts to vibrate. And it tells you you're close to those. And what's neat is in the teenage brain, the first part of that fell on the cutting room floor that they didn't present at the big one that's not going to be in the Nobel Prize Museum is, and if you get too close, it'll have some rockets on it that will shoot you away from the coral reef. Because they're unencumbered by some of the baggage that we as adults bring with that. And, so they had open thinking that way. It was fascinating to watch that design process.
Or it'll zap you and put you at the bottom of the ocean.
And did you have
the Californians were from San Diego, so they had a little bit of water background.
Sure. And did you have any control over the groups that you were assigned to, or was it just random?
Completely random.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you for sharing tonight. Appreciate it.
Great job.
All right, students, you're welcome to stay for the entirety of the board meeting. But
That's
There's a story about a girl from Canada.
all right,
and
student
she
board
had,
members. Jason or Ron, who wants to go
she
first?
Took a sample from it and then tested how much.
Looks like Jason, you're up because Terry's got Ron cornered over there.
Sounds good, yeah. All right, so it's been 3 weeks since I believe I last saw you, and a lot has happened in the 3 weeks. So to start off talking about more like the sports and the activities that are going on, we had a fall sports spectacular at the large stadium, and it was honestly amazing. I think it was a huge hit. It was amazing to be able to see the community there and all the parents and the students just coming together. And basically what it was all the fall sports just showcasing like what they're about, and it was honestly just amazing. Basically our whole school coming together. And next activities, a lot of activities have started up. I know speech team has started up. DECA had 87 members at their most recent meeting. Applications have begun for the Principal Student Advisory Council. Everything is starting to kick off, and it's amazing to see like what's been happening in the last 3 weeks. Additionally, through the access periods, we're beginning to be able to introduce what you're going to be able to do on choice days. So if you need to go see a teacher or you need some extra help on those choice days, you're going to be able to sign up, and I think that's amazing to be able to reach students like that, and that's basically it. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason.
In the last few weeks, it looks like most classes are started up and running in full swing. Workload from what I've heard from students is steadily increasing, but most teachers are very helpful in giving ample time to complete work. We recently had a activities fair at North and showcasing a lot of the cool clubs we have to offer, and it was cool to see everyone finding their own niche and clubs and meeting new people. Picking up interest is important, and I'm glad North is setting up opportunities to find the vast amount of clubs that there are. We had our first home football game, of course, on Friday, and DGN won against DGS in a decisive manner. Everyone
Bring that up.
Yes.
Thank you.
Put that in
Thank
there.
you.
Everyone had a good time. You know, the creative themes, the school spirit was at an all-time high. From a senior perspective, college applications are looming. A lot of students are looking for college recommendations and trying to figure out a steady timeline to complete their essays. From the students I've talked to, a lot are kind of confused on the recommendation and transcript process and how to do them. But I think that with the upcoming counselor lessons and access, those concerns will be sorted. Freshmen have seemed to settle in well. Most of them have found their way around school and started to be more comfortable in the new environment. And fall play auditions take place towards the end of the month. Lots of excitement about that, as well as 2 home football games, Glenbard West and OPRF back to back. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask you both a question? I guess the same. How's the whole transition to school links going? Personally, and just from what you've heard.
For me, I think it's better than Naviance from what I've just used. It's easier to organize and stuff like that, especially because I can look at all I can immediately connect the Common App and then look at everything in one list, so which is nice. But yeah, that's just my perspective.
I think the exact same thing. Yeah, it was introduced to Aspire counselors a little bit at the end of last year, and we also had an assembly during one of our access classes where all the seniors got in the auditorium and we got taught it again, and I think it's just a lot more smoother than Naviance.
So they're more integrated in the flow of your work and school.
Yeah, so with Common App, you can just press a button and then it'll automatically transfer over all the colleges you were looking at on Common App, which is, I think, is really nice and useful.
Yeah, integration school. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, Hank, I'll turn it over to you for item number 4.
And I will turn it over to Gina to come on up as our Title IX coordinator.
All right. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
We invited Amy Dickerson, who I work closely with from Franzik, to speak tonight about some of the changes to Title IX and share those changes with you and address any questions you have about them. So thank you, Amy.
Great. Well, thank you, Gina. And thank you, everyone, for having me here tonight. So I'm Amy Dickerson from Franzik. I've got the great pleasure of working with your Title IX team here, and so really appreciate that opportunity to do so and that opportunity to talk with you this evening. If I'll move my little slides here. So as Gina said, there have been some updates to Title IX, so I'm going to be spending a little bit of time tonight providing you with an overview of what those updates are. Title IX generally is the federal statute that governs the process that school districts have to follow in responding to reports or complaints of discrimination based on sex, including sexual harassment. Back in 2020, for those of you who may have been on the board at that time, you may recall that the board's policies, specifically policy 2265, which is your board policy that governs Title IX, was updated in response to amendments to the regulations to Title IX at that time, so 4 years ago. And at that time, the regulations really were revised to narrow the definition in some ways as to what constitutes sexual harassment under Title IX in a way that was defined differently than how we define sexual harassment under our state laws and Title VII. And it also, for the first time, put in place very specific procedures that school districts have to follow when responding to reports of sexual harassment as it's defined under Title IX. So that in turn resulted in reports or complaints of sexual harassment that may have been, some would be falling under your Title IX policy, and some would be falling under your other policies that also apply to harassment but outside of the federal Title IX context. In April of 2024, so just last spring, the Department of Education revised the regulations and issued amended regulations that did go into effect on August 1st. And these regulations in many ways really broaden the definition now of sexual harassment to more closely mirror how we define sexual harassment under our state laws and under Title VII. And in turn, updated the procedures and the procedural steps that school districts have to take when responding to those types of reports. So I'm going to provide just an overview summary of what those are and what they really mean for the school district and school districts throughout Illinois and what you can expect to see in the coming year. So when we do talk about Title IX, I have this statute up here. It's a very broad prohibition against it protects students, employees from experiencing any discrimination based on sex in any school that receives federal funding. There were no changes to this statute. What changed were the implementing regulations, and so that's what we're talking about. So within that broad definition and prohibition against experiencing discrimination or harassment based on sex, a number of issues fall within that umbrella. So many people, especially those outside of the education context, when they think of Title IX, they think of gender equity in athletics, which was largely the focus of Title IX when it was initially enacted. But really, Title IX expands and really spans the scope of protecting students, employees from experiencing any discrimination based on sex in any aspect of a school district's program or activities, including the various aspects that I have up here. One of the main focuses of the regulations that were put in place back in 2020 and then have been recently amended are really on school districts' obligations and the steps that they have to take when responding to reports of sex-based discrimination, and especially sex-based harassment or sexual assault. So that's one aspect of Title IX's farther reach. So some of the main changes of the new regulations, one is that they now explicitly provide protections for students, employees from experiencing discrimination or harassment based on gender identity, sexual orientation, sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, pregnancy and pregnancy-related conditions, and marital status. Now, your board policies, as the board policies of districts throughout the state of Illinois, already provide protections for student employees when it comes to protections against experiencing harassment or discrimination based on these protected characteristics. And that's because both our state laws provide those protections, especially the Illinois Human Rights Act, as well as us being under our federal Seventh Circuit jurisdiction already has interpreted Title IX to provide these protections. But this is the first time that the federal government has actually explicitly provided these protections in the regulations. Another big change that I alluded to earlier is that the way we define what constitutes a hostile environment based on sex in a school district has broadened. And so I'll talk in a moment about how that is broadened. But in turn, while that is broadened to really have the effect of probably any report or complaint that does have an allegation of what would otherwise constitute harassment based on sex would likely now fall within Title IX and under Title IX's scope. But in turn, the process that school districts have to follow when responding to a report or complaint of sexual harassment, those specific procedural steps that were in the prior regulations, a lot of those are no longer there. So there's still a process that school districts have to follow, but a lot of the very sort of procedurally heavy steps that were in the prior regulations are not in the current process. As well as there are some new training requirements. So while in the prior regulations, we did have to train all of our administrators who are implementing our Title IX policies under the regulations, now that training has to be done on an annual basis, and all employees have to be trained as well. So your administrators who are charged with implementing your Title IX policies and procedures have already undergone that training, and then your employees will undergo that as well, and then you will see that on an annual basis. So what I have here is really the crux of what a school district's obligation is under Title IX. So when a recipient of federal funding, a school that receives federal funding, has any knowledge of conduct that could reasonably constitute sex discrimination in its program or activity, that's what triggers its obligations to respond under Title IX, to follow its policy and its grievance procedures. And really what this means is in the K through 12 context is that when any K through 12 employee has knowledge of an allegation or report of conduct that, if true, would constitute sexual harassment as we defined it under Title IX, that's what triggers its obligations to respond. And those obligations are to respond promptly and effectively. And largely what that means is really governed then by the Title IX rules, the new amendments, and really then what's going to be outlined in your board policy that you'll be reviewing and updating. So what do I mean when I say sex-based harassment under Title IX? We still really define it in one of three ways. So first, any conduct that would be considered to be unwelcome conduct that would be both subjectively offensive as well as objectively offensive, that is so severe or pervasive that it has the effect of denying or limiting someone's ability to access your program, is what we consider to be hostile environment sexual harassment. It's so severe, pervasive, that it creates a hostile environment in the school community. The definition that I went through is that new definition that really, again, mirrors how we define sexual harassment under Title VII and under our state laws. It used to be, for context, under the prior rules, that only conduct that was severe and pervasive and objectively offensive would be considered to be what we call Title IX sexual harassment. So it would have had to have met all three of those elements to trigger your Title IX policy if you had a report that was alleging severe or pervasive harassment. That would have fallen under another policy. But again, now we have a broader policy. Quid pro quo conduct is conduct that might be, it's this for that. If there's any sort of educational or employment benefit that is conditioned on someone engaging in some sort of sexual romantic act, that's considered to be quid pro quo conduct. So just one report of that type of conduct would trigger your Title IX policies, as well as just one report of conduct that would be considered sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, or stalking would also trigger your Title IX policy and fall under Title IX. Upon receiving a report of conduct that, if true, would constitute sex-based harassment under Title IX, one of the first steps that's required under the new Title IX rules, and in turn your policies and procedures, is that the Title IX coordinator or someone who the Title IX coordinator designates must meet with the complainant, the person who's alleged to have been experiencing the harassment or discrimination, and have what we call an initial supportive measures meeting. They meet with them to offer supportive measures, let them know that you've received this report, discuss what supports the school district can provide, let them know about the grievance procedures that the school has, explain to them the process for filing a complaint, and let them know that there's also an opportunity to resolve the complaint or the report informally if that's something that's particularly available for that type of report. So I think that's helpful to especially call out in terms of understanding that that's the first step. There really is a great importance under the rules on providing supportive measures for the parties, and that is a first step that does have to happen when there's a report that's made. I have here just an overview of what the response is that's required under the new Title IX rules and under the policy and procedures that the district will be rolling out when a complaint is filed. So very briefly, when a complaint is actually filed under your Title IX grievance procedures, either because a complainant has filed that complaint or because the school district, the Title IX coordinator, has signed that based on the allegations, what is required to take place generally is that the parties must receive notice of what those allegations are, as well as making sure that all the parties have been offered supportive measures. The Title IX coordinator is required to assign an investigator to investigate that complaint. Under the new rules, that same person could be serving as both the investigator and the decision maker. The investigation process really just has to entail, what would be required to conduct a thorough and prompt investigation, which typically would include conducting interviews with the parties, any witnesses, gathering any information. At the conclusion of that investigation, the rules do require that the parties have access to the evidence, the relevant evidence that's been gathered, or to be provided with an accurate summary of a description of what the evidence is that's been gathered. Under the prior rules, there were more specific steps that had to be taken with longer time frames that had to be applied during at the end of the investigation's steps and some along the way. So now under the new rules, what I just described is what has to take place for the investigation. And then it can proceed to the determination stage as long as the parties have had that opportunity to understand and review and respond to the evidence that's been gathered. And then with a determination, a written determination does have to be issued that just explains what the relevant or what the decision is and the rationale for that decision. So again, under the prior rules, there used to be a process where the parties had to be offered the opportunity to provide written examination questions through the decision maker. That no longer is a requirement. The decision maker just have to have the opportunity to ask questions of the parties if they have any, and then they could proceed with making the determination, and then there's the appeal process. So there's certainly, when you go ahead and take a look at your updated procedure and your policy, you'll see more specific steps, but generally that is, is the process and some of the changes that you'll see. So in terms of what to expect going forward, I believe you already are in the process of updating your board policy 2265 and related policies as well that are affected by these changes. Your administrative procedure will be updated as well. As I explained, your staff have already been trained under the new rules, those that are helping to support and to implement the policies, and then your employees will be as well. And then it will really just be about implementing those policies and procedures. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
I got one question. Does the formal complaint have to be made by the victim, or can a complaint be made by, say, a third party, another student who witnesses it? Because at the high school level, many times the victim will be too scared or ashamed or whatever to bring the complaint themselves initially.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that a lot. So initially, the report can be made by anyone. Any report that comes in, whether it's made by a friend, a teacher, or the person experiencing themselves, or a parent, that would be, as long as it's a report of conduct that, if true, would constitute harassment as it's defined under Title IX, that would trigger the school district's then obligations to respond by first having that initial supportive measures meeting with the person who is actually experiencing the harassment, and then explain to them the process should they want to actually file a complaint, talk with them what that process would entail, and then it goes from there.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Amy,
Okay.
for being here.
Thank you for
supporting
having
us
me.
on
Thank
Title
you.
IX.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Oh, yes, sorry.
All right, our next topic for this evening is the annual climate survey. As the board knows from our prior conversations each fall, we've been using the 5 Essential survey for our state mandated climate survey. However, that survey, as I've shared with the board in the past, is a difficult one for us as it's designed for small elementary schools in an urban setting. So for the past several months, a group of us have been looking at the different climate surveys that are out there. Jill Browning's done a ton of work at looking at the different ones that are out there and researching them so that the entire leadership team could evaluate the different options that are out there. It's really 5 essentials or 2 others. We've already decided 5 essentials is not a match for us, so after reviewing the 2 others, this comprehensive school climate inventory survey is the one that has risen to the top between those 2 tools. I've shared information with the board on that decision and how we got there. At this point, Jill and I are just waiting for this conversation with you to make sure that there weren't any concerns that we needed to address before moving forward. And as soon as then ISB opens their window that we can declare a survey, this is the one that we would like to declare for the next year. So with that being said, are there any questions I can answer?
I had 2 questions.
Sure.
Could I just ask a little bit about between the 2 and what kind of led you to sort of go
Yeah,
this
let me
one?
pull up my notes real quick.
And then while you do that, the second question was, right, isn't whatever survey we choose going to be used for those strategic measures? Is this going to be the source
This
of the
will
data
be the source
for
of the
that?
data
Okay,
for the
just wanna make sure I
strategic
understood that.
measures.
Okay.
Yeah. So really what the leadership team, so this is administrators and chairs across the district, felt that this survey was more easy to discern the data, that the questions were direct and appropriate for the students that we had, that it was very user-friendly. That's a term that comes back many times. And that the categories and responses that they feed back to us are more in line with the things we see in our strategic plan and our values and reflect the district more.
Okay. Thank you.
Did I get both your questions?
Yeah, the second one you answered
All
while
right.
you were looking it up.
I knew that one off the top of my head. All right. Any others?
All right, my last question. And so because they meet the criteria of the organization, we don't have to do 5, this replaces?
This replaces 5 essentials. Yes.
So the state mandates a climate survey and then offers like I guess a group of survey tools that we can utilize, but we cannot create our own surveys.
Correct. The 5 essentials, it comes at no cost from the state. This one comes at a cost of, Jill, what was it? $2,000 per school. So this one is at a slight cost, right? But the data we believe will be much stronger. If we want to just go with 5 essentials, we don't have to do anything with the state. It just rolls out and moves forward. They're supposed to be in August, but now we're in September. There's a window of time in which ISB provides us the opportunity to declare one of these other 2 surveys. And then once we go through that process, then we'll start interacting with that company and that data rather than the 5 essentials data.
But this will be the primary source for measuring our success on the strategic plan.
Yeah, around school climate, yes.
Okay, around school climate.
Yeah, that one indicator, that one measure that's on there. So this year will be the baseline data, and then from there, we'll look at what, based on, we don't know what that'll say yet, but based on what that says, we'll design strategies for trying to improve.
And this is the survey that's referenced in the school report card?
It is, yep.
Okay.
So instead of 5 essentials being on the Illinois school report card, the CSCI data will be there instead.
Are there other neighboring districts that have switched to this as well?
Yeah, there have been ones that have ebbed and flowed through it, so I believe New Trier uses this one, yes. And there was another, District 87, yeah, Clombard's used it for a while. So it seems as though school districts have flipped back and forth between this one and the other one in 5 essentials as they've worked through looking at the different ones that are there.
Okay.
Other questions?
I think it's great that you found a tool that more accurately reflects kind of what we're trying to learn. So kudos to you,
Yeah,
Jill
Jill's
and team
done nice work.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Jill.
All right, so we'll start moving forward with that, and then really, we don't see anything more with it until that survey goes out. And the spring, I think, is when that window goes, so we kind of just sit and wait for that window. All right, budget update. Tree and I and the entire administrative team have been working closely on the budget since we last met, and there's been a few variables that came forward. If you remember, when we last met, we talked about proposing a budget that's about $300,000 in the red, and we told you we were coming together the next week as an administrative team to try to identify reductions to get that closer to a balanced budget. We did that. We met. We have made $200,000 in reductions across the administrative team. We believe in this conservative budget. That was a really realistic spot of us being able to hit a balanced budget by the end of the year. That I think same day we met, or maybe the couple days before we met, Illinois released the corporate personal property replacement tax figures, which the last time we met, we were projecting a 14% decrease. The numbers came in from the state at a 32.6% decrease, which is about a $400,000 impact on us, a $400,000 reduction in revenue for us. So right now, we're kind of staring at a $500,000 deficit in a proposed budget that we would bring you in at the next board meeting. As the superintendent, I'm recommending that the board adopts that budget with the $500,000 in the red for a couple of reasons. One, we were really close to a balanced budget until the state dropped a poison pill on us at the last minute. Through fluctuations that could happen with the budget between interest rates and outplacements and expenditures and transport, there's a whole bunch of variables in here with literally a few students not outplaced or a few students with different transportation over the course of the year. We can make up that $500,000, right? And just smart choices that we make. This is a budget, this is a guess, this is a plan, right? This isn't for sure what we will be seeing will happen next August. I feel like you're hearing about how we have a wonderful, smooth start to the school year. To definitively bring you a plan that would reduce $500,000, and I could guarantee you that would happen, would start with things like hiring freezes, would be like elimination of travel for professional development, elimination of like food at different events where we traditionally have provided food to our staff. Like those are the easy things that you immediately just start cutting. The impact on our climate as a school district would be significant if we entered into those types of changes at this point of the school year. It's unfortunate that the state doesn't release these numbers in a timely enough fashion that we can incorporate them into our budget when we first start developing it. It is my recommendation that the board trust the administration enter into a budget in the red, that we are efficient, that we are careful in our expenditures, that we look for efficiencies everywhere that we can, and try to eliminate that deficit by the time we're sitting here in August. But with the board knowing that our plan is, if things don't break the way we expect them to, and the worst case scenarios happen, things like interests and expenditures and outplacements and transportation and insurance, that we would end up in a potentially a $500,000 deficit. That would still leave us well above our thresholds in board policy for deficit reduction. We wouldn't be hitting that 3%. We'd be well off of it. But we feel like that is the responsible way to approach this last minute change that in revenues that was dropped on us by the state. So with that, I'll take questions or concerns, and I'll kind of just get a straw poll of where the board is feeling with that recommendation so that Jerry and I know if we need to really start implementing some more drastic cuts here over the next couple of weeks.
I'll start. So $500,000 is a lot of money. But I think I have full faith and confidence in Hank and in his administrative team, especially Jeree. I think they've demonstrated that they're extremely responsible with the fiscal aspects of the administration of our district. over the last year, they've come to the board with several different ideas about how to responsibly cut our costs. I have full faith and credit that they would do the same thing over this fiscal year. To touch on a couple points that Hank raised, first, we're going into a negotiation with our teachers in the upcoming summer. We'll be starting that negotiation this fall to do anything that Hank was referring to about, implementing a hiring freeze or placing limitations on expenditures or travel would send a pretty terrible message, in my opinion, to the teachers that would potentially jeopardize how those negotiations would be handled. So I'm not in favor of doing that. Second, even if we do end up in the red this year to this extent, and we have ended up in the red in past years, maybe not to this extent, but even if we do, as Hank pointed out, we're still not going to be anywhere near broaching the cash reserves that we are mandated by board policy to maintain. So even if we do have a year where we have, a $500,000 shortfall, we're not going to be in any way, shape, or form leaving ourselves in jeopardy with the amount of cash reserves that we have in place. So while $500,000 remains a lot of money, it represents, less than 0.5% of our budget roughly. So I feel pretty confident that our administrative team, knowing where we are, is going to do everything that they can to make certain that we end roughly flat, if you will. So I'm in favor of pressing on with the original budget and not making any material adjustments to, our proposed budgets that we had previously reviewed.
I'm pretty much in alignment with that. Can you give us a sense of where the $200,000 in reductions fell? Like kind of in what category?
Technology decided to postpone some more projects. And then Lisa took a look at our outplaced students, and we saw some savings in there because we've had some students that moved out of the district, so we identified that.
Okay.
That's two.
Because I know a lot of the
Two of the
costs,
big
the high
ones.
costs were some the electricity and,
Oh, yeah.
heating.
We
So I
didn't
just, no, but I mean, some of that may or may not come in.
True.
Exactly where we think it's going to come in.
Yeah, I
So
would
just
say
wondered if.
the areas that we potentially have areas for savings or increased revenue include electricity. If, we're making some changes to try to contain those costs. Transportation, we have a whole team across the district that's looking at especially special transportation and efficiencies there, and have already made some massive changes that should impact us there. We're looking at subbing and sub costs that could impact things. And then revenues, it's just hit or miss. We're projecting very conservatively on interest rates, but if those don't fluctuate as quickly as we think they are, that could make up the difference almost entirely there, but we have to guess conservatively. I mean, so these are the things where just a few things swinging there could make up that $500,000 very quickly. But we need to bring you like worst case scenario as we build a budget, right?
So, I think you and Don both said this, given what we know today, this is the worst case scenario, the $500,000.
Yeah, this is a conservatively built budget, yes. I mean, I won't say worst case, a building burns down or something like that. That would be a much worst case scenario.
Yeah,
but inside of normal budgeting parameters, this is a conservative budget.
That's why I said, given what we know.
Yeah.
So since we've been here in the past, in those years, does it make sense, or do you provide more frequent updates so that the board and the community is just up to date on where is that something?
We'll update
we're open
quarterly.
to?
That's
Okay.
about how, it takes a little bit for, accounts to be able to So Dree will keep the quarterly, although if we see something that's drastically fluctuating one way or the other, we will definitely bring that to your attention sooner than that.
I also like the thought of the perimeter things, right? Of course, everything's important, but looking at it from a standpoint of not taking away things from students and staff is extremely important for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have an idea of the last time a budget has gotten either this far in the deficit or farther?
Yeah, the year before I started, so 10 years ago, we had a budget reduction plan.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Mhm. But we've also had a budget deficit probably, what, 3-4 years ago or so?
Yeah,
Is
during
projection.
COVID. Yeah,
Okay.
during COVID.
Yeah. The ending is always something different than what you present at this time of the year because
It's a
there's
guess.
so many unknowns, but
Yeah.
yes.
A little fluctuation in almost any one of them would
Yes.
pretty much cover it. It's,
No, if you take a look at last year, we had a balanced budget. We spent an additional $250,000 in activity buses, right? And then we ended up with a deficit of 23,000, right? So through over the course of the year, we, like, had we not made that purchase, we would have been ahead by $225,000, right? So you can see those fluctuations can happen within that ballpark easily over the course of the year.
with open enrollment coming up, do you anticipate any?
We're still working through the
Okay.
insurance process, but yeah, we'll be bringing you insurance rates in November, so we'll have a better idea of those, the health insurance rates, and those impact 1/2 of the budget, right? It's just from January until June of next year. But yeah, we're working through that process with the insurance committee right now.
It's why we have the policy that we do, so that when we do have fluctuations like this, we don't have to cut services.
Yes.
And I think that's important. And I think we've maintained well above our mandated policy cash reserves, that adopting a budget of this nature is not going to diminish that ability to maintain that type of reserve. So I feel comfortable moving forward with a budget like this.
Does anybody feel opposed to that? We've heard multiple kind of thumbs up. I want to give the board members an opportunity if somebody felt the opposite of that. They have time and space to provide me that feedback. All right, well, Dree and I will work with the team and with Tammy on getting this finalized and present it at the next board meeting, and then there'll be a public hearing at that meeting, and then ultimately we'll ask the board to approve that budget that's finalized and presented. So thank you for your feedback. All right, I'm going to turn the remote over to Lisa and Ryan.
Hello, everybody. It's been a while. So summer school, we had actually more students than we've had in about 10 years, except the COVID summer. COVID summer, we kind of spiked up, around 600 students. We had 329 students in person this summer and 55 students with online credit recovery. Most of the increase is around enrichment courses. So driver's ed, we were up 21 students this summer. We had the AI Inspire class with us this summer with 28 kids. Also AP Chem Prep, over more than doubled this summer, mostly because of the shifting with kids being encouraged, if you met or exceeds, that you were pushed into that higher course. That Megan Mars and Mike Heinz really, and Karen Etter, really did a big push with our kids, trying to make sure that they were ready for AP Chem. Also, we had more EL students participate this summer, and also with our bridge students. So for online credit recovery, we had 55 students taking about 28.5 credits. At the bottom, you can kind of see that the more courses a student is enrolled in, the less likely is they're going to complete those courses. So we are trying to encourage kids to take them during the school year. Sometimes a student will take an online credit recovery course for a variety of reasons. Either they arrived at our school in April, or they just could not keep up. We're really happy to note that 8 students were able to graduate this summer after making up those credits over the summer. So this is our grade distribution. It is really consistent with the school year. Over the summer, we have a slight increase in A's, especially this summer, because kids are enrolled in enrichment courses. So, you know, driver's ed, or doing our AP Chem or our bridge classes, that shows a little bit of increase. Also, it takes a little bit of the distribution out of the rest, mostly B's, C's, and D's, because audit, pass, or incomplete is what falls under our online courses. We did have a couple of students audit this summer, which is unusual. They felt like they weren't going to be ready for the next math course. Even though they passed the math course, they decided to audit just to sharpen their skills. That is the first time I've seen that in a while, which is great that the parent chose to work with a student to come with us. If that student had earned higher than a D, they would have been able to, or those students had earned higher than a D, they could have done a sort of a grade replacement. But if the grade stays the same, we choose to do it as audit rather than having it on their transcript twice. And then reason for attendance. So you can see most of the summer school kids are coming to us for credit recovery. Enrichment, I just kind of broke out with the classes there. This is the first time enrichment has surpassed driver's education. Also, it's usually a pretty tight race for repeat for an improved grade. We've already been in touch with AI Inspire. They have asked to come back. We were excited with how it went the first time. It wasn't just D99 students. 22 of them were D99 students. We had a couple of students from D58, a student from Naperville Central, Hinsdale Central, and I can't remember the other school. But we did have a 6th grader from D58 and his 7th or 8th grade sister. They had a great opportunity to come. They had just moved here from another state, I believe, and so they saw this as a great way to kind of get involved. So another great thing was that we were able to negotiate a free and reduced lunch scholarship for every 10 D99 students. So we were able to have 2 students to attend for free that wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise. So that is exciting.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just have 2 slides here to really represent our extended school year program. For those of you that don't know, extended school year, we often just refer to as ESY, but it's for our special education students, largely in our multi-needs program. The purpose of summer school is to maintain those skills that they've earned during the year and not have any regression occur. This was actually our highest year of our in-person instruction. As you can see, a little bit of a historical perspective there. I like to put that on there because prior to COVID, our students did attend, if they chose to attend ESY through SACIT, our special education cooperative, but we always had pretty low numbers. Students who attended SACIT programs obviously attended, but then District 99 students also had the opportunity, and we had relatively low numbers for that. I think largely because they were not the students' actual teachers, right, that they would be going to for summer school opportunities. So you can sort of see there just how we grew from the virtual that we offered during the summer of COVID, and then this last year was our 4th year offering it in person at District 99, and this was our first summer that we housed it at the Transition Center because of the larger footprint, and we were able to house everybody under one roof, and it was our best summer yet. So that just gives you an indication of what those numbers look like since 2019. So we topped out at 93 students this summer. We utilized all 8 classrooms at the transition center. But what was great is, we have access to both of those kitchens over there, and just a lot of other opportunities that make it a little bit more difficult to do in each of the buildings. What I think is pretty cool stat here is 85% of our staff that are involved in our ESY program are our own staff. And that's not typical of a lot of ESY programs. Teachers want their break. We purposely do our ESY program right after school in June so we can give folks that break all of July and the beginning of August to encourage our staff to continue on with our students. This year, we did have to utilize one SACID member for our OT, our occupational therapist, but then we have several D99 substitutes that are special ed certified who came on as teachers for us, who frequent actually the transition program during the school year. We had a student teacher that actually started as a paraeducator in District 99 in special ed, decided he wanted to become a special ed teacher, then did his student teaching at Downers Grove South, and then worked with me during ESY as a teacher, and a couple other paraprofessionals that are working through to their special ed certification. And then 2 regular ed teachers, one social studies teacher at North and one science teacher at South, both decided to spend their summers with us in para capacities, which was awesome for themselves to get a different perspective, but also for our students. That was really fun to see. And so we topped out at 93 this year, and I can only imagine if the trend continues, we'll be above that this year.
Wow. Fabulous.
Any questions?
Lisa, how many students do you normally have at T99 during the school year?
During the school year, this year we have 71.
So, and how did the building handle 93?
It was tight. It was tight. But we were able to utilize different furniture sort of configurations in some of the classrooms, where we were able to take some students who previously, during our normal school year, students that are in wheelchairs or have other sort of larger physical space needs. We just configured those spaces differently within different parts of the building to not confine them, but it just opened up other parts of that building. We also utilized our open spaces, especially in that new, what we call the blue kitchen on the new side, because it's rather large, for a lot of swing spaces for larger things that we wanted to do that required some more space. But at the end of the day, a large part of what our focus is during ESY are those community experiences. So we are trying to get out and utilize those vehicles and get out in the community as much as possible. It's nice out. The students don't want to be inside either. And so it's not as if everybody, maybe in a typical summer school setting, is coming into one classroom and sitting for 3 hours. That's not at all the experience. There's a lot of moving around. But I would say that 93 is a nice number for that building. So we'll see. But I think too that a nice experience for our multi-needs students is as they experience the programs at North and South, then they get to come and have an experience at the transition program every summer, because that's where they're going to likely be coming when they're done in their respective high schools. So it's just, I think people were like, oh, maybe that's why we went from 82 to 93. It's going to be at the place that I'm going to be in a couple years. And it's obviously, as everybody has seen here, a beautiful facility. So, but I've been the person who's been the administrator overseeing it the last 4 years, and it's been the smoothest, best run ESY since, even with the number of 93. So I was very happy with how it turned out.
Very good.
Yeah, this is
Very
fantastic.
Yeah.
I had Hank and I took a tour of it. Was it earlier this spring? I think.
in the spring.
And I think it's great that you have the ability to have all the students in one place at the same time, and even just walking around, and when it was almost freshly renovated, it's a fantastic space. I'm thankful that you had the opportunity to give these students the educational experience there. And I think it's such an invaluable resource to our students and then the students that come from other districts. So thank you so much for everything you do.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we do have 2 students that are tuition-based with us at T99 this year. For this school year.
Can I just ask, Ryan, I thought I read in here, you said something about this was our first summer with busing. Did I read that correctly, related to summer school we offered? Maybe I'm confused on what I read something
We
about.
offer busing every
It's every
summer.
year?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I misread that, so this
I would
wasn't a
say though, when we're at South for summer school, the bus routes for some of our kids, it's 20 minutes shorter than when we're at North. And so like Lisa, I had far fewer kids missing the buses, turning the buses back, all of that kind of stuff, because kids that live at 55 and beyond 83rd Street, instead of having to catch the bus for 6:20 for an 8 o'clock start, they were able to get it at 6:47 or 6:51, and so that was a huge difference for us. I didn't realize that was the reason until I compared the bus at a week into summer school. I'm like, why aren't we having more kids miss buses? And it was timing, I think. So.
You mentioned 2 kids that are students that are tuition-based. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so other school districts around in the area, frankly, don't have the transition program that we have. And so they find that sometimes their students might need more of a structured program like we would provide that their district doesn't have. And so just like we send students to, let's say, a SACID program for their school day, they send their student to us at transition for their transition experience, and then pay tuition for their student to attend with us since they are not part of the District 99 community.
Anything else? Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you both.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
All right. I've started bringing this to the board each year, and especially in a year when we're watching the budget. This is an important thing for the board to review and take a look at. One of the goals that the board set for me last year was being active and involved in both local and national conferences and trying to both learn and share what we're doing here in District 99. So this is a couple fewer experiences than last year, knowing that we were heading into a tighter budget this year. The ones that don't have a dollar amount really come at no cost to be part of, and are either conferences or leadership experiences. So like DuPage Superintendent's Collaborative, that's a monthly group of superintendents in DuPage, and I co-lead that group. Then a couple of board of directors. The board knows I've been on IASA. I was just named to Illinois High School District Organization Board of Directors as well. There's 2 of them there, IASA, which is the Illinois Superintendent's Conference, and AASA, which is the National Conference for Superintendents. Rob and I have been asked to present at the IASA annual conference. So we'll be presenting on our morale work with the staff and with the administration at that conference. And then I'll be taking the show on the road for a tabletop conversation at the AASA conference. The joint annual conference is the conference I attend with the board each year as part of our professional development as a team. And then I also go each summer to a board of directors meeting for IASA, and that's at no cost to the district. So the key one that's on the table where I'm not presenting or attending with the board is this Suburban School Superintendent's Conference. That is an expensive conference. This is the conference that is just suburban schools, right? And you have to be nominated by the group to be in the group and accepted in, and then you have to attend 2 of every 3 conferences to maintain your membership. I have attended the last 2. So if the board would like, as a cost savings measure, for me not to attend that conference. We could reduce my travel budget by $2,000 by doing that. However, this is the conference where it really is the peers that are most similar to us that I'm in the room with. So that would be the trade-off. That has been a very good conference for us and for me over the years, but I'm happy in a year where it's tighter. If the board feels like, Hank, reduce this budget, that's the one that I would kind of jettison from the list. So with that, I'll open up to questions or conversation and kind of get your direction as to whether you would like this slate or you would like this slate minus the Suburban School Superintendent's Conference.
I think the slate is fine.
Yes, I do too. I don't think taking out the Suburban School Superintendent Conference is going to be that big of an advantage to our budget. I think it's important for you to be out there in our conference and getting feedback from other schools that are similar to us and keeping us in the loop. I just think it's important. So that's just my opinion. But.
Yeah, I think the return on investment for you going to a conference like that is greater as a value to the district. Even, let's say you run into another school in a similar situation as ours and you find some new way to save us money as a result of it. So $2,000 for a conference that's very valuable to you, I think is a good investment for us.
Yeah, I think those of you that are on the board during the book challenges, this was the conference I was at when those came in, and I was able to pick the brains of all the superintendents that were there that charted the path forward and how we should manage that and follow our policies and procedures. And so, I mean, it's very tangible, and that's a group that I reach out to throughout the year as well. So I appreciate the board's support of me attending that. I do feel, Chris, that it has brought value back to the district and being part of that group, but I did want to at least bring it to the floor here. All right, so that's the plan for the year.
Okay, Julie, do we have any slips for visitors?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. Then item number 6, can I get a motion from the board to go into closed session for collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees?
So moved.
Sherelle moved.
Second.
Ken seconds.
Very much. Sherelle Fuller.
Aye.
Ken Dawson.
Aye.
Krista Espinoza.
Aye.
Jenny Hagstrom.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Kara Kasten.
Aye.
And Don Renner.
Aye, motion carries. And for the members of the public, the board will be going to closed session. As we come out of closed session, the only action the board will be taking when it comes out of closed session is to adjourn. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a quick break. And then
I just want to say thank you to North for